Equity futures. Stock index futures can be used to modify the beta of a portfolio. So see, once again, we're modifying an exposure. And it's always going to be based on a view. You're going to see this for level 3 as you're studying as a common theme throughout the program. It's what capital market expectations is a great example of that if you're studying for the level 3 test, right? It's what do I think it's going to do? Then how do I position a portfolio to then take advantage of my view? And like I say, it could be using derivatives and other sort of tools to be able to do that. So number of contracts to buy. So I'm going to put buy here. When you see buy, what are we thinking about with exposure? We're thinking about increasing the exposure. If we're going to sell contracts, we're going to be reducing the exposure. And star goes by this guy. You need to know this one for your exam. So we got our portfolio value there with our denoted by S. We have our current portfolio beta. We have our target beta. And then we have our futures beta down here on the bottom. And then finally, our price per contract equals our index points quotation multiplied by our multiplier. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Once again, you got to be really keenly aware of what the fact pattern gives you here. Sometimes they make it pretty simple. They will give you the price per contract. You really don't need to do anything with a multiplier and so on. Okay. Commit this one to memory. And when I looked at this and I looked at one of the ones we talked about a little bit earlier, they do have a little bit of familiarity with them, if you will. They sort of are set up the same way. All right, so now let's look at an example. I love examples. When I teach these concepts, I always love to put numbers to formulas. And once again, so I just follow the mechanics and the logic. So the manager of a 40 million portfolio wants to adjust the beta from 0.85 up to 1.10 for a 3-month period. So we're increasing exposure, which means we probably have a positive view on the market, right? And then we got to buy contracts to do it. So see, we can get 3 things right from that one sentence. And when you get here, you're way ahead of the game when you're studying for level 3. When you can put that together pretty quick. I'm increasing exposure, I have a positive view. So what do I have to do? I'm going to buy contracts. I want to increase my exposure. FTSE futures with a multiplier of 10 and a beta of 1 are priced at 7,300. We're going to determine the most appropriate strategy, and we're going to show our calculations, okay? Here's a little note for you that you can read here. The reading has a price of 7,300. It just talks about the reading in the book. So if you want, you can read that real quick, but let's go ahead and jump right into our example solution, because that's really what you're here to see. So the number of contracts to buy, remember, we're increasing our exposure, positive view, we want to buy. Our beta is increasing. So how many contracts would it take? All right, so the number of contracts here, pretty straightforward. Our beta is going up. So there's our target beta, 1.1. Our current beta is 0.85. Now, if you reverse these and mess them up, you're going to get a negative number over here, which should indicate to you you did something wrong, because if you're trying to buy and you're trying to increase exposure, this has to be a positive number. Then you simply take the value of the portfolio, 40 million, and you're going to divide that by our futures contract. In this case, it's 7,300 times 10, or 73,000. Sometimes the 73,000 is a given, so you don't have to really worry about making this calculation here. And you'll see that in a number of our examples, this is a given. It just speeds things up for you when you're taking your test. I think it's a great item set kind of question, absolutely fabulous question. I'm going to put a star by that, know how to make this calculation. Pretty straightforward, right? When you're looking at plugging numbers into the formula. Now note that the 0.5 and greater is rounded up when we're looking at contracts, while less than 0.5 is generally rounded down. Don't worry about that on your exam per se. If you are looking at an item set, they're not going to have 136, 137, and 138 for your contracts. They're probably going to be quite a bit different. So the rounding isn't going to be an issue. If it's a constructive response question, then you'd want to follow this rule. and you'd be good to go. It's pretty easy stuff, I think. This isn't bad. I'd love to have that as an item set question on an exam.